Hey, it's Horner, and I'm just going to show you how to go through and linearize different types of graphs. So down at the bottom, you're going to see there are different tabs. So each one of these is going to give us a different type of graph, and you'll have to linearize each one. So if you can't remember how to do one, this is probably the easiest thing to do is just go to this video and fast forward to whichever one you need to linearize and follow the directions. The first one is going to give us a hyperbola. So we need to make the graph. In order to make the graph, we're going to start by clicking on the inside of A1 and select everything including these titles. It's important to do that because sometimes it will auto-fill that in for you. Now I need to insert a graph. So I can either go to the Insert Chart button here, or I can go to Insert and then move down to Chart. So I'm going to do it this way. When you're done, you'll see a graph. It's not going to be correct, and we want to kind of move it over so that we can see our data up top. I want to switch from chart type column chart, and I want to go down and I want to say scatter plot. So I've done that. Now I notice I've got this blue line and I have this red line, which means that I've got something not set up right. If I come over here, it says use row 1 as headers. I just want to, below that, there's use column A as labels, and click that. Now you can see I've got this really nice curve. The other thing you'll want to check before you move on is go to Customize, go to Horizontal Axis, and make sure that this box is not checked. It's treating the numbers as text. So if these were numbers that were not sequential, like you see here, your graph would not be correct at all. So we've got to uncheck that box. This graph doesn't change much, but most other graphs would. And we might see that in some of the later graphs. So we want to undo treat labels as text. And now we want to double check that our title is correct. When I look at the title, I always want to have Y versus X. This is my X column. This is my Y column. Notice that instead of having my title in a Y versus X format, I have it as X versus Y. So I'm going to double click on the title. I'm going to move over to where it says title text, and I'm going to change this to my Y value, which is position, versus my X, which is time. So remember, first column is always your X, second column is always your Y. So this one is position versus time. Notice on this chart, I do not have any of my horizontal or vertical labels or units. So I need to make sure I put those in too. If you ever are just kind of doing this and you click off the graph, you'll notice that that box will disappear. You can do one of two things. You can either click on the graph, go to the triple dots and say Edit Chart. It's much easier just to double click the graph. If you do that, it will also come up. Let's give it, down on the bottom, we need to give this a horizontal title. So I'm going to click on the horizontal axis title. So I went to Chart Axis and Titles. I clicked on that, and now I'm going to type it in. Remember, this first column is my horizontal or my x-axis. So this is going to be time, and seconds is my label, is my unit. So now you see I've done that. I've got to do the same thing now for the vertical axis title. So here I'm going to type in position, and it is in meters. So you need both the label and the unit for each one. All right, so now that we've done that, we've got to take this curve, and you'll see the curve. It is a hyperbola, and I've got to linearize that. So to linearize a hyperbolic curve, we need to remember in your notes, we said that you need to do 1 over x. So in this column, we're going to do 1 divided by whatever our x label is with its unit. So this is time, so I'm going to do 1 over time, and my unit now is 1 over a second. At this point, I need to tell the computer to do this. So I'm going to click into the cell, hit the equal sign, and then I'm going to select this first cell. Oops, sorry. I want to hit 1 divided by, and then click on the 1. Now that I've done that, 1 divided by 1 is 1, so that's correct. I want to fill the rest of the cells in. The easiest way to do it is to click on that little tiny blue box, hold, drag, all the way down to the bottom and then let go. So now it's put that same formula into each one of these boxes. The next thing I want to do is I want to just take everything I have in my Y, just go ahead and copy it, and then I'm going to paste it in over on this side. You can retype these or you can just do that. Now I have the right things that I need in order to linearize. So I'm going to select all of this data. I'm going to now do a chart. So I'm going to say Insert Chart. And I want to change this again to Scatter Plot. So I'm going to go down to Scatter. And I need to do Use Column D as labels. And you'll notice that it still looks kind of funny. But that's because notice that our numbers down here on the bottom are just numbers. They're not in the right order or anything. So we'll go over to Customize again, horizontal axis, click on Treat Labels as Text, and now it looks like what we want. So this is the correct graph. It should always be pretty close to a straight line. Let's go ahead and add some things to it. First thing we need to do is we need to change the title. And remember, we always want Y versus X. So this is going to be position versus 1 over time. Next thing we will need to do is we're going to change the horizontal axis title. This one on the bottom, so we're looking at the numbers down here, needs to be 1 over time. And then remember, our unit here is a 1 over a second. Last thing I need to do is change my vertical axis title. And this one should be position. So I'm going to type in position, and that's in meters. And I think earlier I didn't really change the title. I must have changed the other thing. So let's change this. I'm going to call this one position. So that's what's on my y-axis versus what's on my x-axis, which is 1 over time. All right, cool. Now that I've done that, I have my title is right. My labels for each one of my axes are correct with the right units. I need to add a trend line now. So I'm going to double click on the dot, go to trend line, and then I'm going to go to label and say use equation. Now that I've done that, I see my slope, which is 1, and I see my y-intercept, which is very, very, very small. And now I am done with the first type of graph, and I want to go on to the second. So I'm going to actually move this over, and I'm done linearizing that. All right, this is the second one. This is our parabola, and we first need to make our initial graph. So I'm going to go ahead and select everything and go ahead and go to my graph. I want to change this to a scatter plot, and I need to say use column A as labels, and then go to customize and make sure that I turn off treat labels as text. My title is not correct, so I'm going to double click on it. I always want to do y versus x, so this would be position versus time. Don't need labels on it, but you do need labels and units for your axes. So on the horizontal axis, this one is time, and it is in seconds. And my vertical axis, this one is position, and it is in meters. So now I have everything. I notice that this is a quadratic relationship or a parabolic curve, and I need to linearize it. So remember, to linearize this one, we don't do 1 over. Instead, we're going to square the x, so that's time squared, and our unit would be a second squared. For the y-axis, we leave it the same, so it's just position, and that's in meters. Now I have all my numbers here. I want to just keep these the same, so I'm going to copy that and paste it right here. Just make sure, yep, numbers are the same. And now I need to do a formula to change the times so that they're all squared. So this is going to be equal to A2, and I'm going to put caret top 2 and hit equals, and then that will give me my first number. I can now grab that blue dot and move down. That'll copy those formulas into all of the cells. So you'll notice A8 square root of 2, I mean not square root, but caret top 2, which squares the numbers, and you can double check to make sure they look right. Now that we've done that, let's select all of our data again, do insert chart again, go through the same steps that we did before. click on Scatter, use column D as labels, and you'll notice it looks the same, and that's because when you go to Customize, you've got to choose and deselect Treat Labels as Text. Now you should get a straight line, or a line that's very, very close to being straight. Notice that my units again, my label title up here at the top is not right, so I'm going to say this is position versus time, and I'm going to put caret top 2 to represent squared. I need to change my horizontal axis, and that one is time caret top 2 because we squared time, but you also need to make sure that you square the units. And then finally, we want to change our vertical axis title, and that one is going to stay the same. It's just position in meters. I have everything in terms of labels and units. I now need to put a trend line on this one because this is the one we want to use for our equation. Our trend line, when we click on it, should be pretty straight, and you'll notice that it is. I want to move down. It is linear, and I want to add an equation to that. And so here is my equation for the position versus time squared graph. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which is Groot. So when you do the Groot graph, let's go ahead and make it so that we can see it. We're going to go do the chart, change it again to scatter. Once I've changed to scatter, use A as labels. So now I get this guy, but notice it's straight, shouldn't be. So something's up. Yep, got to go the horizontal axis, and we don't want to say treat labels as text. Now you can see that Groot shape, that square root shape. Let's change all of our titles and axes. So this is position, again, versus time. Go down to horizontal axis title. This one is going to be time and seconds, and our vertical axis title is position, and that one is in meters. That graph's done. We see the relationship. Don't add a trend line or anything to it. We now need to linearize this. So remember, to make it linear, this time we're going to leave our x values the same. So we'll just go ahead and select all of these, and we're going to plug them in here. Notice that sometimes they don't come out right, and so you might have to go back in and just retype them. So I'll do that, 49. And then we need to square our y-axis values. So this will be position, but remember it's squared, so caret top 2, meters, caret top 2. Because it's squared, the unit also has to be squared. Let's do our equation. This is equals. We're going to do 1, so we're going to click on that cell, do caret top 2, hit enter, click in the cell again, grab the blue dot, move down, let go, and you'll see that it has squared all the numbers again. Let's go ahead and make our linear graph. This one's going to be really kind of cool because it's going to give me a slope of 1. Got to remove the column chart, go down to scatter. We want to use column D as labels, and then we've got to go back to customize and make sure that we have turned off treat labels as text. And now we've got a really nice, perfectly straight line. But remember, our title is probably not going to be right. We've got to change it. So this is going to be position squared versus time. Let's change our horizontal axis title. It is now position, it is now time in seconds. And then our vertical axis title is the one that we want to have as a squared. So position, and remember that's squared, and this would give us meters squared. And we'll hit enter. Now everything is set up. Let's go ahead and make a trend line. So we're going to go to trend line. We're going to move down to label. We're going to say use equation, and there is our perfect relationship. So that is how to go through and linearize a hyperbola, a parabola, and a Groot shape graph.